You dream of your motorcycle. If your day isn't complete without some time in the saddle. If all you need is the open road and a full tank of gas, well, you've come to the right place because this is Throttled, and it's starting now. Here is your host, Kevin McKinney.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Throttle. So glad you decided to tune in or watch us live. For those of you joining during the live stream, appreciate it. Thank you so much. And today I've got two other hosts with me. I got first off our main guy who's been with us for a very long time, and the show would not be here probably without him. He's helping us keep it up and running more than probably anybody else right now. Larry, how are you doing, buddy?
Hey, well, I thought you were talking about Tom, but I'm doing great. Things are okay out here in California, and I'm starting to gear up for the time when things get relaxed enough for me to be able to go out riding again.
Awesome. Tom, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. It was a good two-wheeled week on three different two wheels of transportation, and this weekend weather in the southeast was just absolutely gorgeous. And yesterday happened to see at precisely 1:35 the Thunderbirds and Blue Angels did a flyover, and they went right over my subdivision. So we had several of our neighbors out, and it was, all lasted all of about 3 to 5 seconds, but it was very neat.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Any plans that we know of them trying to make it out to the West Coast?
The Blue Angels?
Yeah. Okay. Well, both of them are flying together right now.
Yeah. No, I don't know about that. We have a fleet week in October every year when the Navy ships come in under the Golden Gate, and Blue Angels always fly that weekend. But I haven't heard anything about the Thunderbirds coming out as well.
All right. Yeah, I've been fortunate both a few times to see both groups, and they're very, very entertaining and awe-inspiring at their skill and ability. So that's very cool. Well, what about riding? Anybody get out and tread on two wheels of the motor kind? I know you really can't there, Larry.
Right. Well, if you're talking about the motor electric kind, then yes, I've been out on my electric bike and my road bicycle. But no, I haven't ridden my motorcycle. I'm the only ride that I'm planning imminently is I'm trying to set up an appointment with a mechanic to service my bike.
Okay. What about you, Tom?
Yeah. I had a couple of rides this week on my analog bicycle. A brief ride yesterday.
We call it a manual.
A manual or analog, yeah. Got the scooter out yesterday, had to run a couple errands, and just hadn't ridden that in probably close to a month. So ran that around for about an hour. And then today I got the Beamer out and dusted it off and went out for a quick ride, just maybe, in the foothill mountains, Georgia. Did about 120 miles, so just a few hours out and back, just to kind of get the feel of it again. Didn't push things real hard, but got into some twisties, and it was just a nice, pleasant ride.
Were there other people out?
There were quite a few. Yeah. I saw a lot of bikes out. The weather was absolutely gorgeous. So when I did mine, I left the house maybe about 12 noon, temperature about 78, top of the hills that was at about 73 and low 80s coming back. But I was passing bikes constantly.
Interesting. Yeah, there've been quite a few bikes coming out here as well, especially this weekend, and it's really starting to give me the itch.
They just breaking the law out there, or? Well,
it's not quite breaking the law. It's really a recommendation, but. The governor in the state has not really given the okay for people to, go out for unnecessary, just traveling. Basically, if you go out on a bike or a car, you're supposed to be doing it for necessary things, shopping or helping a relative.
Mental health is a necessary thing to keep up. Just saying.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that can be used and abused.
Touche. Well, I mean, myself, um, I did move the bikes out of the garage, start them, clean their windshields and all the plastic, well, acrylic more than anything. Not really the plastics, but clean off everything that needed some do. And then I missed my garage when I went to put them back in, and had to take several U-turns and figure eights in the cul-de-sac on each bike to find the driveway again to get it back in the garage.
Yeah, those driveways are tricky.
I tell you, man, they're hard, and they move all the time, and
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
just fun there. But I was not in appropriate riding gear. I was because it was just like, I'm gonna back these out, and my wife needed to get something, so I was like, well, I'll work on the bikes a little bit. So I, just cleaning them up a little bit while she's doing her thing, and I was like, well, if I'm moving them out, might as well start them. They need to run, and just uh, check to make sure I didn't have any leaks in sunlight and stuff like that, and then, well, they're warm, so it would be, I might as well just make sure that everything's functioning right, and a little quick, around the cul-de-sac kind of thing. But it was a lot of fun, and just didn't last nearly long enough. And parked them, came inside, and tried to schedule a different ride probably 3 or 4 times. Just me going out, having some time, but schedules kept shifting and things kept changing, and I wasn't able to do it. So it's been a frustrating time period, that's for sure.
Well, at least you got them out. And actually, when I was out, Larry, I was thinking of you because near the end of my ride, I was passing by an empty shopping center and stopped over and started doing some figure eights and tight circles and just kind of testing myself, since I hadn't taught a class now in a couple of months, and making sure I still knew how to do some of those things.
That's what I was doing too, just figure eights and off camber standing turns and stuff like that. What are you gonna say?
Yeah, I just spent a few minutes. I think I spent all of maybe 15 minutes doing it, but it was at the end of the ride, and just it felt good. Yeah.
Larry, do you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I did, but I forgot. So
okay,
let's move on.
Moving on.
Another senior moment.
So we before the show, we were talking about email and stuff like that, and I have received several pieces of email. A lot of it is for my eyes only. Lloyd, who's normally in our chat, I don't think he's here quite yet today, did write in a lengthy email on a show that we did a few episodes ago, and I want to share that with the other guys before we read it, and I forgot to, and so we'll be trying to cover that here the next week, maybe 2. Depends on how good my memory is with all the things I have on my list of things to do. But we are still taking emails. We love it when you guys give us emails. So write us feedback at throttledpodcast.com, or go to the website, throttledpodcast.com, click on the contact tab, and we'll get it in the same mailbox. And we like getting emails. So you guys write us any questions or comments or suggestions or complaints or whatever, and we'll read those out, and if they're appropriate, and make sure that we have a good time doing it, as always. All right. Let's see what to do next. Let's go ahead and talk about our Throttle crew members real quick. So I actually need to add a name back to this list. Alex has rejoined the Throttle crew. Appreciate him coming back on board. We got
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, he's awesome. Robert, Autumn, Jerry, John, Rodney, Nick, Don, David, Ralph, Stephen, Lloyd, Michael, Dan, TC, Jorge, Randy, Sean, James, Tyler, Paul, Jeff, and Chuck. And for some reason, I'm thinking there was another person who signed up as a patron, and I can't see. This is where me not having my normal stuff during the week because of the new work situation, the new job, is messing with me, because got the email, didn't make the notes right then like I normally do. And now I don't have the phone with the email that tell me who it is. And that is my mistake, and I apologize for it. We will get that all cleared up next time. All right. Back to the main show. But anyway, if you would like to become a patron and help support the show, go to our website, throttledpodcast.com. Scroll down on the main page, find the Patreon logo, click on it, and it'll take you through the process of getting signed up. Every dollar you give us and donate helps us just kind of keep the lights on around here. And hopefully, once things get back up and running, maybe we can spring for some kind of expo or something like that once they get back up and going. But that gets to, what was it, episode 224, where you guys were talking about industry shows and how they're going to be affected in the long term and everything. So if you haven't heard that episode, go back and listen to it. It's a good one. The guys did a great job on it. And let's go ahead and dive into what we got news-wise.
Cool.
All right. Well, everybody and their mother seems to be jumping on the electric bike bandwagon of some sort, right? It's kind of a thing now. But there's a name that we haven't heard too terribly much from. And that would be Kawasaki. What do we know about what Kawasaki is doing? Or what do we think we know about Kawasaki is doing? Maybe the better approach to that.
Well, this was an article in I think Cycle World, and it was mentioning that Kawasaki has really had a long-term electric bike project going on, and they've been showing this electric bike periodically over the years, and it's a bike that in some ways appears to already be kind of outdated by the technology. The technology has kind of passed the bike by. One thing of interest on this bike is that it does have a 4-speed transmission, so it does have a gearbox, unlike most, I think the other electric bikes. And part of the reason that it may have a gearbox is because the engine only puts out, I think, about 20 horsepower. So it's not characteristic. Again, I think the problem is that electric motor technology has passed by since this development bike was first created by Kawasaki. So they are not saying that this is a prototype or that this is going to go into production. On the contrary, they're saying that this is simply a model that they are working on and that they're trying to refine, but that they do have an interest in ultimately producing electric bikes. And I think that's kind of the significance of showing this model, is that they are demonstrating the fact that they have some interest and perhaps commitment to coming out with an electric bike model, which will probably be a lot different from this one that they periodically they show. And again, the thing that I find of interest about this model is that it does have a 4-speed gearbox, and whether or not that persists in the ones that they finally do bring to production remains to be seen. But it would be an interesting thing. And Kawasaki has remarked that they know that this differentiates them from the rest of the market.
So, and this is a totally derailing comment here, and it just kind of hit me. If you have a smaller electric motor that can only put out a smaller amount of power, you would think it would require a small amount of power. Would a gearbox actually make batteries last longer? Because they don't have to use as much power to spin as fast?
Well, that perhaps it's simply because it has less power. They felt they needed a gearbox to distribute the power as effectively as possible. I'm not sure, but I don't know the engineering aspect of it. But the question in my mind would be when they update the technology on this bike, so that they do have a more current and powerful engine, would they still retain a gearbox, or would they go as others have to, simply having a non clutchless transmission, an automatic transmission,
Well,
essentially.
yeah, because isn't the idea of a gearbox is to get your engine or try and keep your engine in the torque range that's appropriate for it. So always have your revs up to its optimum torque range. That's not a problem with an electric motor.
Right.
Well, that's true, but I was trying to think of from an efficiency standpoint. The faster you go, the more energy you use. But if you had a gearbox that allowed you to obtain the same amount of speed with a lower amount of overall energy output to get there, wouldn't that be an overall more efficient design? You may not get there as fast because you have to take the time to, not apply power and change the gears and reapply. Just a question,
Yeah, no. I think
I have no idea. I mean, that's one of those, that seems to make sense, and then somebody's going to have a perfectly scientific explanation of why it's not. Like,
right.
Well, the power it takes for the motor to actually change the gears or whatnot could offset any kind of gains you get. I don't know.
Well, I think it's reasonable to presume that the higher the RPMs, the more power that is used, and so if you and in electric motors, the torque is it's supposedly is pretty equal throughout the RPM range.
Mm-hmm.
So it would make sense if you can keep the RPMs down via a gearbox, then maybe you would be using less power, less electricity. To get the same amount of torque and therefore preserve battery life. That certainly is a reasonable thing. However, the project bike that they demonstrate only has a range of about 80 miles or something like that. So, the technology again would appear to be outdated.
Yeah, I think they point out that even given the low power, this is not a small bike. It's still 483 pounds, so
80
full
pounds,
size motor.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it looks like a Ninja that's been that the motor's been taken out and a big electric motor's been put in.
Yeah,
yeah,
it does. It looks like a reasonably modern bike. But it's clearly the technology is not up to date, and certainly as it is, it's not competitive with any of the other bikes on the market, and Kawasaki obviously knows that. But again, we mention it just to point out that Kawasaki is showing an interest in producing electric bikes, and that's something that we sort of haven't been hearing from the Japanese manufacturers.
Yeah, well, I mean, I also think they're holding their cards close to their chest. We've heard of them, different manufacturers, strategically partnering with battery swap guys, or this kind of, in the realm of electric powered vehicles. But they may be trying to find the most efficient or the right answer to the question, and they just haven't felt like they've done that well enough.
All right, which even using the current technology, I think we've talked about this previously, that it's still not quite at the point that we would like it to be in terms of range, time for recharge, and the infrastructure to do that. So we still have a ways to go, but I think again, the Japanese manufacturers have not been really that present in this market, and having Kawasaki show that they have an interest in producing an electric bike is something significant. But the bike that their project bike obviously needs updating.
Yeah, but they are saying in the article, though, that they have no plans to develop an electric bike anytime soon.
Right. Well,
right? There's just not a market for it right now. I mean, there's really not a huge demand.
but I think there's that, but I think they're also acknowledging that technology, even the more advanced technology, they feel is not at the point that makes an electric bike really viable. So, so they're still waiting for the technology to advance to that point. But I think it's a chicken and egg thing, and if there are enough electric bikes on the road, then the infrastructure and the press for more advanced technology will be greater, and and the potential profits will be greater, and so. Uh, the fact that other manufacturers are already producing electric bikes and developing infrastructure is going to increase I think, the pressure on the market. And there is also a time frame involved because some of the countries in Europe are pushing harder and harder to outlaw combustion engines and go entirely electric. And so, the manufacturers have to prepare for that.
Any other comments, Tom?
No, nothing more. I think it's appropriate that the the market's not there yet. I mean, you need some infrastructure, and there needs to be some leap in electric power to get it out of a niche.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about this last week, I think, a bit before it becomes a toy. You got to really want to own one of these in some markets. Larry, your market in California is probably the best from a infrastructure standpoint that makes the case of owning an electric bike feasible.
Yeah. Right. Right. But it's going to develop, and I think it's going to happen. And so that's sort of what Kawasaki is acknowledging, is that they have an interest in this and watching this and developing a bike eventually. But they're saying it's not there yet. I think that for specific purposes, it is there now. And the more bikes that are out on the road and the more manufacturers that are putting out bikes, then it's going to put more pressure to develop the infrastructure and vice versa and improve the technology. So I think it's a chicken and egg thing. And having bikes already out, that just like having electric cars that are already out, puts pressure on other aspects of the manufacturing field to update and to meet the needs and to improve the technology. And so I don't know if sitting it out is the best strategy, but I understand why they're doing that.
So, shifting topics a little bit to one of the companies who have electric bikes out, Harley Davidson has reported some first quarter results as well as a direction change, which I will tell you right now, I personally consider idiotic. But that's my own, cooler talk, water cooler talk opinion there. So let's dive into this a little bit. So the Harley has said it has sold 4,439 motorcycles over the first quarter of this year. That's down 17.7% from last year's quarter. International sales were up 20.7.
That's 40,000, not 4,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. 40,000.
Yep.
You're right. 40,439 bikes. And that is down 17.7% from the 49,151 bikes sold same quarter last year. International sales saw a 20.7% increase. And, U.S. sales, which represent the bulk of Harley's market, were down 15.5%, according to Harley Davidson. Those numbers, I see how they work, but okay, whatever. And they're saying until mid-March, sales were actually up. And then world goes home, locks themselves away, and things start changing. Here's, they talk a lot about what's going on, the pandemic and how it's affecting, and basically nobody knows, and liquidity, and, we're supporting our dealers and all that good stuff, right? Everything that everybody in the world is saying. But here's the part of this that to me becomes concerning. They announced a new 5-year strategic plan, and it's called the Rewire. And the new plan will be fully fleshed out in the coming months, but the overall aim appears to be refocusing the company on core strengths and prioritizing its strongest markets. Now, this article by motorcycle.com, and I think all of us here, pretty much means they're going to start doubling back down on the touring market and the baggers and the cruisers. They have said they're still committed to the Pan American and the Bronx, and will still likely be coming out this year. And the Live Wire is still a core part of HC's lineup. Honestly, because they've already invested so much money in it, they're going to put it out. But I have a sneaking suspicion we're now getting into the Buell state with these. They're not going to have the backing of HQ. They're going to be put out there and left to die on a line. And if that's the case, you know, I mean, you can only take a horse to water. You can't make them drink. You're changing your plan, even though you said with the plan that you were doing, you were up 6.6% until all this crap started happening with the virus. After decreasing and decreasing and decreasing sales, people are starting to buy bikes again. You've got them excited about what's coming out in the future. They're investing in the brand again. And now you're going to say, hey, screw all that. We're not innovating anymore. We're going back to our tried and true because that was working so well beforehand. I think it's just going to leave Harley in a bad spot. I will turn the floor over to you guys before I jump up on my soapbox.
Tom, what do you think?
So yeah, I think it's appropriate. So right after they made their quarterly announcement, I was just looking. Their Friday, their stock price dropped about 6.6%. Still, it's about $20 a share, up from their low of 15 early last month. But yeah, still pretty dismal. A 6% drops. Pretty drastic. It sounds like more of the same. You know, let me stick my head in the sand and go back to my core business that has been discussed through analysts and the market and the industry throughout, that it's dying. The big cruisers are just not where the growth is. So there was another article that was talking about the Harley financials, and one of the comments on it was curious that I just happened to see. It said, "Who wants to go out and buy a $40,000 motorcycle? Where are you going to go?" It's an interesting thing that they wouldn't innovate themselves out of this situation, but go back to their core offering as a way to think that that's going to drive more revenue.
Well, yeah, it's not. Yeah, of course, there are things that remain unclear about it. The acting president, Jochen Zeitz, who is not confirmed as the permanent CEO, but he has said that Harley needs to focus its efforts and to focus on the markets that have shown the most profitability and in which they have been the most successful. So that does.
T-shirt sales.
So T-shirts and loans, because I think that their financial division has been pretty successful.
That's true.
But but he did say that they are committed to also bringing out these new models, and that they're not going to abandon them. But he did not go on to say that they are also committed to, pursuing those lines and bringing out some of the other models that had been projected and speculated about, like the electric bicycles and the smaller electric motorcycles, and also the small displacement combustion bikes. The I think 650 versions of the engine that they're bringing out on the Street Fighter now. Um, there was speculation that they would be having a smaller version of the engine for small displacement bikes, and their announcement would suggest that maybe they're going to move away from that possible line of development, which would also mean that they would be moving away from developing smaller displacement bikes for other markets, for the European and Asian markets. And
so based on that, Larry, do you think we've seen then the last or a decrease? Perhaps they'll kill off the street line, the 500 and the 750.
oh yeah, that's a good question. I don't know what this implies about that. Yeah, I think that I've read some indication that they feel that that line of bikes has not been as profitable as they had hoped. So that would suggest perhaps that they are not interested in retaining them. However, those are the bikes that they use for their training classes, and their training classes were a part of their marketing scheme. That was an integral part of trying to enroll new riders and increase the base of people that ride motorcycles and would buy their bikes. So there is some suggestion that they're also thinking of moving away from that part of the plan as well.
All right. So I personally think Harley Davidson needs to go to Levitech. Give him a huge, I'm sorry. Before all this pandemic crap, we were selling 6.6% bikes higher. And we're on pace to do better than we did a year ago this quarter. You have us positioned in markets we weren't in with bikes relative to what that market is asking for. You are reaching out to new markets within the United States as our current market and designs are failing. And you're being innovative and being a technologically leader to put us on the precipice of a major shift in power over the next 5 to 10 years. And we're going to be one of the market leaders and design creators in of electric motorcycles and an influencer in those. But no, they looked at it and like, oh no, everybody's not selling as many bikes. Neither are we. We're going to kick this stuff to the curb. And go back to what was obviously working so well before. When you look at, okay, what's your market 10 years from now? What's your market 5 years from now? What's the amount and size of population? What are their buying strategies? Levitech, I'm sorry, he did it right. Everybody in the motorcycle world rejoiced when Harley started doing this stuff. And now we got the same old crappy Harley, and that's a little harsh, but it's the same old Harley we had 5 years ago.
You can say that. I won't fault you.
It's just I'm honestly I'm a little peeved at this because part
Kevin,
of what I do.
Wasn't it just a few weeks though that they were partnering with an Indian company to manufacture and rebrand like a 350 or a 390?
Right. That's right. But what he's saying now suggests that they're thinking that their plan is to move away from that.
Well, I'm hoping this whole, will be brought to more light in the future, or whatever phrasing they use in this article, will actually shed a little bit more light, because right now the conclusion that we jump to is of negative connotations, right? It's horrible. And yeah, I get it. You guys are hurting. The current state of things with the worldwide economy is not great. But I just, you have enough cash to just pull up your pants a little bit, tighten your belt a little bit, and survive this thing. Another rash decision. I don't know. It's
certainly the market from a shareholder standpoint didn't like the news with that drop. So,
Well, that's not quite clear because in the article that I was looking at on where was this, on Revzilla, they say that on the day that they made this announcement, the stock actually bounced up, and people had a very positive take on what they were saying.
when did they make the announcement? So they had a spike up to about $24 on the 29th.
Yes.
That was
that was when
Wednesday.
this article came out on the 29th, and they said that
So
there was,
from Wednesday to Friday, then they dropped 20%.
yeah. Well,
that's when people went, holy crap. I mean, it's just like, oh, we're going to freak out. And then you're going to stop. You're going to think about it. You're like, hey, wait a minute. So they're going back to the model that has fewer potential sales in the future. That can't be good.
And compared against Polaris, which has had an increase in sales against Harley. Granted, much smaller, considerably smaller volume, but
yeah, I mean that's.
But also Polaris, a lot of their increase in sales has been on their non-motorcycle divisions.
Yeah. No, I meant just in the heavy cruiser market. Their head-to-head, their market share has been gaining, but yet to be expected given how their volume compared to Harley. But
and actually, Polaris noted that they've had an increase in sales in their four-wheel ADV vehicles, but not so much in their motorcycles. But in the other divisions, they've actually had an increase in sales throughout the pandemic. So,
that's about all people could do is go out in the middle of the woods and side by sides and play in the mud.
Yeah, or they're also work vehicles. So maybe that there's also people that are using them for functional purposes. Yeah. But
I need to buy one for work.
At any rate, that you do.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's air quotes work.
Air quotes. I get it. Yeah. So
what 20 years ago when somebody says I'm working from home,
right?
It's like, yeah, sure you are. Nowadays you believe them. Because,
now you really are.
Yeah, we really are.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
there you go.
At any rate, I do agree that it's kind of disappointing what he seems to be saying, and we'll have to see how this pans out specifically as time goes on and things unfold.
Yeah, I think it just needs to be taken out with a rubber hose. All right, let's shift gears because why not use a motorcycle pun? Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about middleweight adventure triad. What does that mean? That means that we're talking about 3 bikes going head to head in motorcycle.com's. And I like how motorcycle.com does these. I really think that there was a 4th bike that should have been included to this. It would have come in last. I understand that. And they acknowledge it at the end of it. But this is a middleweight adventure competition or shootout between. Yes, I was doing the intro.
So what's the 4th bike?
Tenere.
The Tenere 700.
Yeah. The vaporware bike that's been promised in the U.S. for 4 years. That bike?
Well, no, it's actually a lot longer than 4 years. but here's the thing: is we know it's being sold other places. It just hasn't made it here yet. It was supposed to make it this year, right? Like November-ish of this year. We'll see if that still stands. Again, back to the story.
Sorry.
Tom chasing squirrels over there. All right, so the shootout is between the KTM 790 Adventure R, the BMW F850 GS Adventure, and the Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro. Could they put these names any longer? All right, so Yeah, that's what we're talking about. KTM 790, BMW F850, and the Triumph Tiger 900. I'm pretty sure those are all the top end versions of that model. So they should have all the comparative, I guess, bells and whistles that you'll get from buying the top end of each of those. And interesting article, long article, but really good read. What do you guys? How do you guys want to go through this one? Do we want to just talk about
Well,
each bike individually, like they kind of do, or compare and contrast?
I could summarize it very quickly. So
Okay.
they basically the idea was that first of all they waxed very enthusiastic about the BMW, especially on its on-road performance. That it was very comfortable. It had great wind protection. All of its features worked beautifully. But then they said but when they took it off road, it was a total beast and was too heavy. Suspension wasn't up to it. Tires were the wrong tires, and so it really was not the bike to take off road. And then they went on to wax totally enthusiastic about the KTM 790 Adventure R, which they said was specifically built to be an off-road, motorcycle. And KTM has a long history in the Dakar Rally. They know off-road, and this bike was built from the ground up to be used that way. And they just waxed totally enthusiastic about its off-road abilities. They said even on road, it was a very reasonable bike to use, and that you could use it on road as well. And so what then surprised me was that when they went on to talk about the Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro. They also praised that for its off-road performance. They praised it for its on-road performance, and somewhat to my surprise, they came out saying that the Tiger Rally Pro was the best of both worlds.
So what was it that gave to the Tiger the edge here? What pushed them over that finish line first?
Well, the Tiger Rally Pro, according to them, not only performed, it performed really well on road. It had great wind protection. It was very comfortable. There was no vibration. It had, great features. The seating was extremely comfortable. So basically, its on-road and its off-road performance was so good that it was the best of both worlds. It was the most comfortable mattress, the bed to sleep in for this test. So they actually came out saying that if you want a bike that can handle itself off-road and that can also be used for long distance touring, this is the one for you.
Cool. So Kevin, before I talk, I'd be curious your thought on this, because you are the dirt rider amongst the three of us. What you thought of it?
Okay, first off, that's a scary statement to make. I would say that I ride
dirt?
more dirt than you guys. I don't know if I would consider myself as a dirt rider. As much as I would like to say that, I must admit my abilities are not that great. I'm surprised that they went with the Tiger. I have not ridden the Tiger. From everything that I have read, they classified all the bikes correctly. The KTM, if you're wanting off-road ability, KTM R, the R model is really where it's at. If it was between the regular and I'm going to throw in the Tenere here just for a second, the Tenere 700 and the regular KTM 790, for the price difference of the two, the Tenere would be probably the best bang for your buck. But once you add a couple thousand and you add what the R brings to you, they kind of say, hey, it's that all day long. And really beforehand, it was more of a toss-up, and they just went with a Tenere just for price alone because it is a cheaper bike. BMW, it's kind of what the article says, great on the road. I mean, it is a BMW. It's more 70% road, 30% off-road, very capable off-road, just not quite where KTM is at off-road. But also KTM's not quite there in just a luxury comfort feel you get of the BMW as well. And I think kind of what Triumph has done is trying to take the best of both worlds, right? And it's one of those, it's really good at both things, just not really a complete master at either one of them. But that really good, if you're it averages out to where they eke out past the KTM. And actually, if you look at their shootout scorecard, KTM, by the percentages and the points that they allot it, would technically be your top bike there. But what that doesn't take into consideration is just kind of a gut feeling here. Talking about prices for a second, MSRP on the BMW, 14,445. If you want the rally color option, which is a pretty cool little red, white, and blue package, I think it's a red, white, and blue package. It's 15,290. KTM is 13,699. And then the Triumph is the most expensive bike at 16,700. Actually, I thought that was reversed. I thought that it was the second expensive, so I didn't realize it was the most expensive. But it has a 888cc engine, while the KTM has a 799cc, and the BMW, of course, 853. Horsepower, pretty close to each other, 80.5 for the BMW, 84 for the KTM at 8320 RPM, and 84 for the Triumph at 8940. And I got to say, I mean, I would have probably, like, if it was me not have driven the bikes, I would have put money on the KTM being the choice. Just from everything that I've seen, it's the lightest bike at 467 pounds. BMW is the heaviest at 552, and maybe this is where that Goldilocks weight thing comes in. It's just right at maybe 503 pounds. If you think just right, it's 503 pounds, go for it. I'm surprised that that's where they ended up at. I've not, like I said, I've never actually ridden a Triumph, I don't believe, and I've never ridden any. I have ridden an older F850. Hated the clutch, but the rest of the bike was really kind of nice to be on. And I've not ridden the KTM 790 Adventure R, which I understand is a completely different kind of beast than my 690.
How so?
I mean, it's. I mean, my bike is a true dual sport. It's more of a dirt bike that's street legal. The way it sits, the suspension, the gadgets and gadgets that are on it. Whereas this has a little bit more of a tilt towards adventure, a little bit more creature comfort, and some of the, I think the suspension tuning, just off the top of my head, mine's a thumper, right? And this is a parallel twin. That's also a big difference there. So, I don't know. I would have ended up with the KTM. I mean, because I've thought, as we're sitting all at home and you start thinking about your next bike, because, the one that's in the driveways, obviously just getting older and older. My Tenere's 5 years old now, I think. And so I was just thinking, not that I can or will, but what would my next bike be right now if I were to go right now and had, let's say, $25,000 to $30,000 to get any bike I wanted to within that price range. Not that I have that, but if I did, what would I end up with? And the 790, the 1190, the KTM were top picks there. The BMW 1250 GS. But then I'm trying to think of, okay, what kind of riding am I really going to do with this bike? And is that adventure bike still the right thing for me? Because I have the 690 and I really don't want anything heavier than the 690 right now. So, that's kind of where I'm at. And I mean, those three bikes are kind of my target area right now. And I don't know if I'd be happy with a 790 or an 850 in the long run. And I'd have to go ride them and everything. So, long answer to your little simple question.
Well, I think that the idea is that if what they say is if you're going to do 15 miles on road and then 200 miles off road, then the KTM is the clear bike for you to use. So
Right.
the KTM is heavily favored for off-road use. The problem with its on-road use is it doesn't have enough wind protection and that kind of thing. So the ergonomics are not as good for
So let's put it like this: rides. If I were doing a transatlantic trail or a BDR backroad discovery route, and I were choosing between these three bikes, I would have to go start looking at the weight of them. Okay, what do I want to pick up, or what do I want to have people help me pick up a lot? I would look at the final drive, and I would be looking at, some of the, because those are long rides, some creature comforts, and okay, so let's assume I'm going to ride my bike from here to there, do it, and then ride it all the way back here, right? So that's, and we'll go with the Mid-Atlantic because it's the closest to me. That's a lot. You're doing more street than you are off-road, but when you're off-road, you're off-road. I mean, the Mid-Atlantic is probably the easiest BDR that they have. I would probably get the KTM and see what I could do about that wind protection. Or, I would target that bike and then research what I could do for wind protection for somebody my size. What can I do? How are the ergonomics on that bike for somebody of my size standing for a long period of time? One thing I do like about the BMWs is I feel like they're better set up for taller riders once you put risers on them. The handlebars are more where you want them, whereas I feel like even with the KTM and my Tenere, the handlebars are still too low. For me, even though on the KTM I've dropped it down half an inch and I put 2-inch risers on it, I still feel that my KTM is still just a little bit on the low side for where I want my handlebars to be. The BMW, when I've been on those and they put the 2-inch risers on, I'm much more comfortable standing up. And I think part of that is because I have that huge tank, and when I've been on them, I've been on the thumpers on the 1250s and the 1200s. I've got that head to rest on as I'm making corners or making turns and stuff like that. I'm not fully supporting my weight with my legs, which are pathetically weak. So.
All right. Well, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I was going to say, so my take on this is one, I was in the dealership a couple of months ago, back when we could go to dealerships, looked at the 790 and sat on it, did not get a chance to ride it. Ergonomics, it's curious you said that, Kevin, because I thought it was great ergonomics for taller guys. It fit, and I've criticized KTM and some of their other bikes where they've done this flared tank like on the GT and such, where if you've got longer legs you can't get your knees underneath the flare, so it's really a pain in the butt to try and sit on those bikes. But the 790 was a very nice bike to sit on.
Yeah. Well,
distributed its weight fairly well.
Yeah, the 690, the one I have, the gas tank's under the seat and you actually fill it up behind you. Gas cap's behind the seat, and so wait. Is the 790 also has the gas tank is down?
It's
super
down,
low,
right?
Yeah, near your foot pegs, on both sides. So the center of gravity on that bike is extraordinarily low and centered. That also helps with picking it up too, because you rotate around that and above that.
Definitely would. I would like to try one of those when back when we can. Um, the Beamer, okay. I'm the Beamer guy, but I have never really warmed up to or understood the 850s or even the 800s. I just don't get the bike, other than buy it if you want to save some money. But for the weight of the bike, for what you're getting with it, you might as well get the 1200 or now the 1250. So if I compared the 850 to 1250, that 850 actually weighs wet weight is more than my GS, my 1200 GS.
Well, and then let's remember, this is the Adventure with a larger tank, more fuel capacity.
6.9. Okay, yeah. I got 5.2. So all right. If I compared it to the 1250 GSA, then you're at an 7.9 tank, and the weight difference is about 50, 60 pounds. But when you're getting up to that size, doesn't matter. You get the shaft and everything with the larger bike. It never made sense that 850. I've ridden it. I was like, Whereas they dropped the 650, and I've ridden the 650 Thumper that they used to have, their dual sport. That was a fun bike to ride. It was a blast. The weight was right. It was just it was comfortable. Ergonomics were good. So that's my piece of it. And just on paper, the Triumph looks nice. I am dying to go try one of the Triumphs. I wouldn't go towards the rally version. I would go towards the street-oriented version because I do want to try it. When I was searching to buy my last GS a couple of years ago, it was neck and neck with the Triumph 1200. And it was, just a hair difference between the two bikes.
So we were really talking about. Wait a second ago. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were finishing up there. Where to go? My bike wet is 566 pounds, and this bike wet is 552 pounds, and mine's a 1200. It's an 850.
Yeah, and my 1200 GS, I've got a 2018. Spec sheets say it's 540. And I don't add any bars or anything to it.
All right. So final thoughts on this, guys? Anything else to add?
Well, I would say that the article did make the point. All three are really good bikes. You can't go wrong with any one of them. But depending on what your riding interests are, there's clearly a differentiation between the bikes. I've ridden the 850, and I think the new 850s are just, the engines are just they're smooth as silk. The bikes are extremely comfortable. The ergonomics are great, and I would love to have one to just ride cross country. But my interest is on the road, and I can really see the KTMs for somebody who is really interested in doing a lot of off-road riding. And what they're saying basically is that if you want to do a combination of both, the Tiger Pro is the way to, Rally Pro is the way to go. However, it's not as good as the KTM for off-road, but it's probably pretty close to the BMW for on-road use. So that's really where I think they decided that it was the best combination. All three are great bikes, and you can't go wrong with any of them. It just depends on what your interests are.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive down into the paddock.
The paddock. Well, this has been kind of an interesting week. Of course, the first question that I had, that everybody has when thinking about racing, is, well, what's going to happen? Is it going to start up again? And if so, when is it going to start up? And the answer to that is we don't know. However, I've read a number of articles that are talking about what the most likely scenarios. And what is clear at this point is that the MotoGP is looking into um, having racing that is on closed courses without any spectators and with minimum staffing. So they're trying to figure out what the minimum staffing needs would be in order to get the racing going again. And they sort of they've canvassed the teams, and they figured out that they're going to need something like 1,200, a total of 1,200 people, just to staff the teams and get the racing going. And then they'll probably need another 800 people for each race to fill the various functions involved in running the race: marshals, medical staff, technical, scrutineering, pit lane people, that kind of stuff. So they're thinking that that is going to be their minimum need. Now, there are problems with getting all these people to all of the potential tracks that they might use. But now that some countries are starting to relax some of their, restrictions, and things are starting to open up a bit, it seems a bit more likely, I think, that Dorna is going to figure out a way to reinstitute some racing for, let's say, the second half of the season. And they may have something like 10 races that will be starting possibly in July or August. And they will probably still have a championship, that will be awarded at the end of these races. But they have not yet specified when the racing will actually start. But my guess is that, and the consensus is that seems to be the direction that they're going in. And so look towards a resumption in some fashion of MotoGP racing over the summer, and there will be an abbreviated season, after which there will be a championship awarded. And I think that's going to be what happens this year. The other news that around that is Davizioso. This is kind of a rumor kind of mill kind of thing, but Davizioso apparently is not happy being with Ducati, and Ducati has made noises, and they have tried to recruit other stars in MotoGP. And they approached Marquez and I think Quartararo, and so they are looking for other people, other stars to ride their bikes. And so Davizioso recognizes this, and he signed up for I think through the 2021 season. But after that, he's not sure what he's going to do. And apparently he's made some overtures to Honda HRC to see if they might be interested in having him aboard. But at this point, Honda is kind of committed to Marquez, both Mark and his brother Alex. And so it's not clear if they're going to be open to having somebody else in the 2021 season. So that's another thing that's going around in the paddocks and in the rumor mill, and we'll follow that as news develops. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is that there was a virtual MotoGP race today, and each virtual race has been expanded. So today they had virtual races for all three classes of MotoGP. So they had Moto 1, Moto 2, and MotoGP as well. and I didn't have the time to watch all of them. I did watch the MotoGP race, although I didn't listen to uh, the interviews of the racers prior to the race and after the race concluded, which they do. They had a couple of announcers this week doing the announcing for the race, and the field was pretty similar. Valentino was not in the race, nor was Dovizioso, but most of the other um, primary racers were there, and there were some technical. I thought there were some technical difficulties in the race. This event was now 13 laps, and but you could see that as the race started and people were talking, and um, that there were differences in lag times depending on the person's the rider's internet connection, and so that was a problem during the race. I think for some of them, they were probably having trouble controlling their bikes because of the lag times. Now, don't forget these riders are situated all over the world, and so there is definitely a problem in terms of their ability to have smooth control of the bikes in the virtual racing. The other thing that I noticed, this was particular to this week, was that the commentators were hard to hear because they were talking at the same time that you could hear the chatter among the racers as the race was going on. Often the chatter was in other languages. I'm sure it was either Spanish or Italian, and so I couldn't understand it, but it did interfere with my ability to understand what the announcers were saying as well. So sometimes it was hard to know what was going on in the race because of that. They were using the new 2020 version of MotoGP, which I'm probably going to get. I have a PlayStation 4, and it would be kind of interesting to try it out and see how closely it simulates what I see in the MotoGP racing. But they were using the more modern version, and honestly, the graphics might have been a bit of an improvement over the last year's version. The physics might have been a little bit smoother, still not natural looking, but a bit smoother than in the previous racing. And as far as the race itself, one of the things I noticed, and I think was more prominent this week, was that there was an awful lot of bumping, and sometimes it looked like racers were deliberately trying to knock opponents off of the track. And I'm not sure if that's true, but because sometimes the physics in the racing was not smooth enough. So a racer who was just trying to move his bike over, to lean over a little bit further, sometimes it looked jerky when you were watching it, and it looked like they were actually bumping the other racer. But nonetheless, some of the racers really had a hard time staying upright, and Quattararo was sort of primary amongst those. He must have fallen off his bike 6 times during the course of the race, and some of those times it looked like he was deliberately bumped off the track. But it's hard, as I say, it's hard to know for sure. The race, for most of the race, it was led by a racer named Pecco Bagnaia, and he rides for the Ducati, the non-factory team. This year, he's a second-year rider, so he's a relative novice. And both last race and this race, he did pretty well. So he was closely pursued by Alex Marquez and Maverick Vinales, and Mark was in 4th place, during most of the race. However, towards the end of the race, Pecco crashed sort of unexpectedly, as did Marquez, the Alex Marquez, and this allowed Vinales to take the lead. And so he led the race for the last 3 or 4 laps, and he won it. Alex took second, and Pecco took third. Quattararo was not a factor in the race because of all the crashes that he had. I didn't hear what, as I said, I didn't hear what the racers thought. But what struck me about the races again is that it seems like some of the better riders tend to do better in the racing. Pecco being an exception, but he maybe this may be a harbinger. It may he was a talented rider in, I think, Moto2. I think he won the championship in 2018, and he may be an up and coming rider to watch. So he's riding in the Pramac Ducati team this year, and we'll see if his virtual racing is a predictor of how he does in the regular shortened season and perhaps next year. So it'll be interesting to watch that and see what happens. Vinales has been doing well in the last few races. So some of the better racers seems to do well. Marquez has been consistently in the top five. Alex Rins, I think, was in the top five. The better racers seems to do better on the virtual racing as well. There'll be another virtual race in a couple of weeks, and I'll report on it then. It is fun to watch, and I like to hear the commentary of both the racers and the commentators, just not at the same time. So maybe they'll get that straightened out next time.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. It's a virtual race, and you report on it just like you do in the normal ones. I was kind of like, wow, this is, and Marquez crashes, allowing. I was just like, yeah, that's a statement I've heard before.
We're
different Marquez, but you know.
Yeah, well, we're desperate these days for things to do, and I'm grateful that they're trying to put this on and make it significant enough so that people will watch it. So it is a fun thing to watch, and I'm sure it's fun for them to do, and we'll see how it develops. But it would be great to have the regular racing resume.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. All right. So, hey, everybody out there, don't forget you can follow us on Twitter at Throttled Show, Instagram Throttled Show, and Facebook Throttled Podcast. We do broadcast this podcast live on YouTube at 7:30 Central, 5:30 Pacific. And if you tune in to our Facebook or Twitter feed, we usually post up 15 to 30 minutes before we go live the YouTube link, and we start a pre-show kind of ditty, so you can go ahead and log into it and then just kind of sit back and wait for us to get broadcasting. We already talked about emailing in the show, feedback@throttlepodcast.com. We would love to get your feedback, comments, or thoughts there. And outside of that, gentlemen, it was good to hang out with you tonight. I appreciate it.
It was a good evening.
All right. So, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, who wants to sign off first?
Oh, heck.
Oh,
nope. Larry spoke first. He wins.
I'll do it. All right. Well,
see, that was our virtual race right there, and Larry won.
There you go.
You didn't even know you were playing, Tom.
I didn't know I was playing, but that's it's a bolster to know that I can win. So anyway, everybody, of course, I want you to stay safe, and if riding is not yet in the cards for wherever you are, well, hang low and wait for it to happen, and then get out there and ride. And if you can ride now, by all means do it. I'm hoping to be able to get back on my bike really soon. But above all, make sure that when you do ride, you ride your own ride.
All right, Tom?
Tom?
Yeah, I'll echo that. Everybody have a good week. Thank you all for coming. If it's appropriate for you to ride, go out and go ahead and do it. But now's not the time to try and see whether you can get that knee down if you've never done it before. So just have fun, but don't press it. But that's about it. Look forward to it was a good show. Look forward to seeing everybody next week.
All right, next week we'll be here. If you do get out there and ride, everybody, ride safe, have fun. We'll talk to you then. Bye, guys. All right. Hey, everybody in the live stream, and Alex, our late joiner. He just got here, and we're like, and we're out. So sorry about that. And
better late than never.
Yeah. I'm glad We got Kevin Turner in here. We got Vapor and let's see, Lloyd, Sonic, Alex. I know Rodney's in here. Is there anybody else that?
Autumn Cook.
See, Rodney. I didn't
Autumn.
see Paul. Paul, I don't think was here today. Autumn.
Autumn, good night.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were here.
Yeah, he spoke up at the beginning, and then he
Yep.
got entranced into the conversation. I don't know. I'm just talking. All right. Well, everybody that tuned in live, thank you so much. We thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading all your comments. That makes me look like I'm on the show, like I'm staring off into the nether in deep thought and everything. So with that, we're going to go ahead and end the live stream. Everybody have a great week. I think there's a few more days of good weather, and then in the south it's going to be rainy a few times, and hopefully by the weekend it'll clear up. I don't know. I'm really jonesing to get out and take a ride. We'll see how things go on that. So everybody in the live stream, thanks. We'll see you later.